this thing on. Welcome back to Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This episode is going to be episode 145 in our X-Wing series podcast. This is the original podcast that kicked this episode off. So if you're tuning into this and you just happen to be listening to it because you've joined our new SWU podcast, this is how we originally started the game. And I'm going to be honest, we've had some ups and downs over the last 2 months. Especially with how AMG has treated us, how they've treated our community. And I've had a harder time wanting to cast until we knew what was going to happen with X-Wing. Well, that announcement came in June, middle of the way June. Ironically enough, I think a week after they did a interview with Crab Rock, right? And so it was a little weird that they did that interview and then all of a sudden we get this announcement. But essentially, AMG has decided to sunset X-Wing. And when they made that announcement, I got pretty angry, like pretty angry. I've invested the last, 4.5 years of my life into this game. We created a podcast, from scratch to help beginners get into this game. We've promoted AMG when they made the switch, and gave us a whole new rule set. We've been brazen and calling them out. And to me, one of the big things is like when this news happened, which we kind of knew was going to happen, or we felt this was going to happen anyway, that they are going to sunset this game. I got angry. And so in an effort to not come onto a stream and do nothing but rant and rave, do nothing but scream and yell, blame AMG, blame Asmodee, just get really angry, I chose personally to take a step back and say, okay, hey, I need some time to decompress. Locally, I've still been playing X-Wing, just not as much. We have a league that we play in our locals. We got about half the people that we used to, but we do have a league still going, and we actually changed some of the rules up so we didn't have to deal with some of the BS points that AMG has, in my opinion, neglected to provide us with for the last year. And so we still locally are playing X-Wing at least a couple times a month, which is really fun. For me, one of the big things, and this is why I kind of wanted to hold off on this episode, is because we, as a podcast, haven't made a decision how we want to support everything going forward. We knew that there had been players talking about forming some sort of an alliance, is what we're going to call it. And they had talked about taking over in the event that AMG essentially just said, here, take a middle finger and walk away. So with that being said, we wanted to kind of wait and see what was going to flesh out about that before we just said, hey, we're going to either quit doing all our X-Wing podcasts, or B, we're going to, go full bore and do everything we can to support the game. We still have not arrived at an ultimate decision, but I think what that did is that led us to a jumping off point where we finally felt comfortable having a conversation with one of the new alliances that have formed called I think it's called the X-Wing Alliance. I think it's XWA. So we felt comfortable and we decided to bring on Nick Sperry from there because he is their PR director, and decided, hey, let's have him on. Let's talk about what's going on for X-Wing, and then let's kind of come together and decide, how can we help support it the best we can. What this means is that for the next half hour to an hour, we get to talk with Nick Sperry. We get to find out what's going on. I'm going to ask some hard questions. I'm going to be honest with you. They did give Nick all my questions ahead of time, but I am going to ask some hard questions, some very pointed questions, because I want to see how we could continue making this game to live on for as long as we can. I know Decipher still lives on, right? And it's a smaller community, but is there a way that we can make X-Wing live on? Can we still have 400 to 800 person tournaments, at least once a year in Worlds? How can we revive the local communities and all of that fancy stuff? So I held off on this episode specifically until we had enough information to feel comfortable coming back to you and having that conversation, because I don't like saying goodbye. If you hadn't figured that out, one of the things I hate most in life is death. The second thing is saying goodbye. And usually sometimes those correlate and sometimes they do not. I do not like it because I've made so many good friends. And it's going to be very hard for me to part with people. And I understand that that's part of life, but it is a very hard thing for me to part with. And I'm going to give a real quick story and then we'll move into the interview portion of this show. There was a gentleman at my locals that had been a big supporter of our podcast for the last 2 years. Just hands down, one of our best Patreons, was really big into supporting the show, and he was pretty upset when it walked away, when AMG made that announcement. one of the big things then came is I haven't seen him but once. He does play Unlimited. We just play at different stores, and I got to see him last Friday, or was it last Friday or the weekend before? I got to see him on a Saturday for an Unlimited event, and we got to talk for quite a bit about, our lives and catching up. Those are the things I don't want to give up. I like those things. Do I get to see everybody as often? Probably not, but I still want to hope that somehow we can make this work in some way, shape, or form to give us a community to allow us to continue down that path. Now, with that being said, let's bring in my co-host for tonight. Please welcome to the show, Mr. JJ. Your hat is still awful, even after how many times I've told you. How are you tonight, sir?
Just chilling down here in Florida, down in the heat dome down here. Temperatures go over 100 degrees over here, and it is just blazing hot. Came down here with the family to recover from my month-long expedition out to the Midwest, and just enjoying time over here. Got to see some old locals here that I haven't seen in quite some time. Got to see Crispy, got to see Andrew Cox, got to see a couple of other people I've known from Armada and from other games here. Michael Fawn, his kid Zach, and it was such a great time to see everybody again, playing Swu. And tomorrow I will be playing my first Battle over Endor scenario, and I can't wait to get to that tomorrow.
Awesome. Also joining us is Mr. Nick Sperry from the XWA. Welcome to the show, Nick. You are the official PR rep, I heard.
Yeah, the big title.
Yeah,
big deal over here. Moving on up in this world. That's me.
Yeah, so hopefully you all had a good weekend. It was not super hot again, so I don't know if it was hot in Chicago, but it was not too warm out over here, so kind of excited by that.
I went kayaking the other day in Chicago. There you go.
Yeah, that's great, kayaking in Chicago, and that's actually what we get to do this week. I'm actually on vacation technically right now, but starting next week we're going out. We rented a house on the lake, and we're gonna go out and sit on the lake and kayak, and probably just kayak and sit in the lake for as long as we can for a whole week. So hopefully it doesn't rain. That's all I gotta say, is because this house is not cheap.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, man. a week is long enough that maybe you can pass some bad weather. Worst case.
Yeah. Well, you know what we packed up? We packed up a lot of board games. So we will have something to do. We literally have a suitcase full of board games to play with if it does rain. But speaking of board games, right? The reason we had you on is because obviously, as everybody knows, we had X-Wing Sunset, right? And I guess I should mention Armada has been sunset as well. Though I will be honest, our show is never really focused on Armada, so I don't know. It is what it is, right? But yeah. I do know that we have the official statement from AMG, and so you joined an ever-growing team. It seems like I don't know how many people are there now, like 25.
Oh, more than that. It's pushing the upper 30s right now. In terms of the server itself, we can break down kind of how that all looks, though.
Awesome.
You hear that number, you might be confused. I understand that.
Fair enough. And so what we wanted to do is there was an announcement that was made by your group, the X-Wing Alliance, that basically said, hey, we've decided that we're going to continue X-Wing. We're going to help provide content. We're going to do all these crazy things. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about how we got here, right? So like we could go back and we'll read the AMG letter in just a few minutes, but I want to introduce what the X-Wing Alliance is, because if somebody has to wait for 20 minutes to just hear what the heck it is, it seems a little silly to me. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the X-Wing Alliance, and then tell us, what the whole group is about, and kind of what your, like, a high level of your goals.
Sure, yeah, but first, after this ad break, it's a good question. A lot of you guys have seen some communication kind of rolling around out of nowhere, posted all over the place from a group called the X-Wing Alliance, and most people, I think, kind of understand the basics, but I think it's important to really classify exactly who we are. Essentially, we are a group that was formed by key members of different parts of the community of X-Wing that cover everywhere and everything. We have people running squad builders, bots in Discord, streamers like Greg and I and Dion, amongst many others, OP organizers, community leaders, representatives, all that. We all came together in response to the news that we saw from Atomic Mass Games in a manner that we can look ahead on how we can keep this game going beyond Adepticon 2025, because of course X-Wing is still technically under OP support and we'll have events through that. So that is the big goal and who we are.
Awesome. So let's dive into the sunset, right? You know, like, so we will get to the portion of where we actually interview you, but I want to talk a little bit about the sunset because I think that kind of helps precedent us, right? That helps push us into why we're here now. So we know AMG, there you can see it on the screen. I'm not going to read the letter. It's very disheartening. It's very short. It's very to the point, in my opinion, I guess. Like, it just says, here you go, Merry Christmas, we're going to support you till next year for Adepticon. Because then we got an announcement from Asmodee where they basically like sound like they're sad that AMG killed the game, and I don't understand. Like,
and buy our other product also. Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's Tanner. It's like if you were announcing you guys were never going to stream again, and at the very end, so make sure you support us on Patreon. That was the vibe that I got from the Asmodee post.
Yeah,
and it's like I'm very frustrated, right? I'm excited that like they're going to try and keep X-Wing till Adepticon, but at the same token, I'm not excited by it. And I'll just be frank and say, because I'm so sick of the points that we're in now. And that's part of what I liked when the FFG had it. As many people that had gripes about FFG, at least we got points updates a little bit more often. They seem to care a little bit about it. I don't know. So there's the announcement, and there's Asmodee's announcement. Then we had an announcement from Adepticon that says, by the way, they open with a quote, and they basically say, don't worry, Armada and X-Wing, we will support you in whatever it means beyond Worlds, which I'm just going to get, I will say a heartfelt, like I would buy an Adepticon ticket even if I'm not going to go, just to support them, just for the pure fact that they actually acknowledged us. I mean, they acknowledged us, right? Well, June 13th versus the same day. Oh my God, it was actually the same day. I didn't realize that. I thought it was a couple days later. But they actually acknowledged, and you guys hadn't made an announcement. Nobody had made an announcement that they were going to continue. And here's Adepticon saying, we're going to already support you. They're providing more support, for Christ's sake, than Asmodee and AMG did.
Yeah,
I don't.
Well, and they said more words in general in their post from Adepticon than the people who actually have been keeping a game going for, what is it, since 2012. Yeah, 12 years, and Adepticon has more to say. Is really fitting and disappointing, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. And I promise listeners we will not spend an hour with Tanner ranting and raving, because if you scroll back up, that the post by them, that to me, that was so disheartening, it wasn't even funny. Like, when I got that, it was, I posted it and I shut my phone, all my social media stuff I shut off for like a whole day. All I took was just private messages. I did not go on social media. All I knew is that it felt to me like we aren't even being given a real send off. That's what this feels like. It feels like we're literally being told, hey, we're going to force the community to deal with us for another year because we want to liquidate whatever product we have left. And they finally decided, somebody either at Asmodee or at AMG finally was given the green light to say, we've sold enough product that we can tell everybody we're canceling it. Because the Telltale sign, right? I don't know if you were on the website like 2 weeks before, they pulled all the bloody product off. Like, what that means. There's only two things that means. Ever.
Yeah.
It's a really bad business practice that I don't think is actually super common to do that before announcing something like they announced. To not be able to sell through any more product or do one more print run is pretty scummy. I got to be honest.
Yeah. And it kind of feels like, I mean, we're not getting the Starfighter, right? Or the Starwing, whatever it's called,
Correct.
The ship I actually do not like, because I hated the way that ship interacts with things, because you can just, it's like a little Tycho, a new version of Tycho. Anyway. I don't know. JJ, you've been pretty quiet. What is your thoughts on the cancellation?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the unceremonious, like, canceling of X-Wing was very, very disheartening. Especially coming on the heels of the interview that Krabak had posted with Will Schick, talking about the development cycle and like talking about what it would take to do rebalancing and stuff, and some of the comments made on it kind of makes sense post, announcement about them not wanting to rebalance for the sake of balance, because they figured that if they do it again, somebody's going to figure to a way to break the meta and stuff, like, little comments like that. It was definitely very disheartening, especially, I tend to keep up with a lot of Discord channels for a lot of different communities, and then my own local community as well. And it was just a series of events that just led to this, and the way it came about was just so disheartening there. But I do have to echo your sentiment for Adepticon. I mean, what a way to console players in a time like something like this. Their announcement was just something that I felt was very, very heartfelt, and yeah, we should definitely continue to support Adepticon and all the events that they'll do for us in the future going forward there. But on the heels of this, this event here helped usher in the X-Wing Alliance, and you guys released a statement here talking about going forward, what the community is going to do to keep the game alive, and reviewing everything here, and going back to Nick here. So for the X-Wing Alliance, who exactly is the X-Wing Alliance? What makes up its members?
Yeah. So the X-Wing Alliance is a group of community representatives, I think is the best way to describe it, who have come together in best interest of keeping X-Wing going. And how do you define going? That's not just providing some basic, point support. It's like a comprehensive plan to continue to update the game, develop things for the game, and ultimately have OP support and events for the game when we down the road, not too far from now. So
Now,
it really, we're shepherding the game of X-Wing along as it is passed on to us, because we feel like it's our duty in this game. It's too awesome to kind of just walk away from. Nobody really wants to walk away
yeah,
from it. And we're not
yeah,
going to.
totally agree. Yeah. Now, regarding the different positions that need to be done, it's not like something that one person can take on, right? It is a very massive undertaking there. What positions are there in the XWA? Are these elected positions, or are these positions that were given to certain people? How does that
Sure.
work? How does that structure work for XWA?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. I definitely can understand why maybe some people, either pessimistic or just not aware, would think that this is like a cool kids club for X-Wing, and it's secret, and that we're kind of appointing ourselves to do things. That isn't the case. We are also evaluating who can help us and be a part of the conversation on an ongoing basis. So it's not set in stone with who's involved right now. Um, but essentially, remind me the first part of your question, JJ, because I feel like I answered the second part first.
Yeah, sure. So for the positions, right? Obviously, there's
Sure.
different
Yeah.
positions that
Are they
people
elected? Are
right?
they?
Yeah, are they
Yeah, of course.
elected? Have
So
they been assigned to people? Yeah.
yeah, the positions are were basically put up for vote. So we all kind of came together on what needs to happen next, because there were a lot of things were kind of moving fast. This whirlwind of news was kind of something that we all felt was coming, but when it finally happened, we kind of sprung into action, and there was a lot of things moving very quickly. So we decided that we would first form what we call the council, because we're kind of referring to just making cool Star Wars references with the names of these things. Three people who would basically be responsible for keeping things moving, structuring things, proposing direction on next steps, and then creating committees to help with certain parts of the game, including OP. So those were all people who nominated themselves. They would basically lay out what their plans were and what they thought the future of X-Wing under community guidance would look like, and then we all put it to a vote with everyone in the server voting on these folks. So they were elected individuals. The three people who make up the council who were elected versus Louis Long, or AKA Utini. He's from the Jawa. I think it's just Junkyard. I can't remember, Team Junkyard or Java. There's a specific name.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Java related discords, but he is the guy. If you guys, for those of you that don't know Louis personally, you've probably seen a lot of his cool prize support, his metal objective tokens, all the cool Mandalorian related OP kit stuff that he created. He's been a huge part of the community. He was elected, and then Filippo Bossi, or Pifo, from the Italian side of X-Wing, and XTC was elected, as well as Rathos, Stephen Kim, who, of course, is the architect of Yasby and runs the Off Meta podcast. So those are the three folks that were elected to kind of create a structure and kind of keep things going.
So
Now, in terms of their positions, right? These are people that are essentially running as like the administrators of the XWA. They're not in charge of points. They're not in charge of PR. They're not in charge of like, you know, some of the nitpick stuff, like some of the smaller stuff. They're just there to essentially be administrators, right? Is that their role?
Correct. Yeah, they're basically going to be the ones that kind of herd the cats and lay out proposals for our goals and the actual committees that will be responsible for the stuff that you just mentioned, JJ. So I do have a few committees I'm going to read out that we've already voted in folks for. That is development. The development squad is what we're calling them. That makes up three parts. You have design, points, and rules. And then we also have a comms and community side of things that we're going to be figuring out more of the nitty gritty of fairly soon. That includes me with PR and community representatives. And then down the road, we'll have a organized play squad or committee as well. So for design, we had Paul Heaver was elected. We voted on for design. He was elected to be responsible for design. If you're wondering what is design, this is basically it's designing things for the game, new things, changing things, stuff like that. That's a later down the road thing. We'll have a statement more on the specifics of these soon. Points, Ali Pocknell, who is the 2.0 world champion, was elected for points. That is what it is. It is going to involve theory crafting and testing a point structure that is going to work for us all. And when I say us all, I don't mean the server, I mean us all. That's a big job and it's going to involve a lot of work, but we're really excited about the prospect of being able to create new metas moving forward. Lastly, I'm going to say one thing. And lastly, just because I was listing them all, and then you can ask all the questions you want. Rules, which is Maui, was elected for rules. Basically, rulings moving forward with the game, the current game of X-Wing as it is with what exists in the game. And then, of course, maybe down the road, what is developed.
All right, so let's go back to the point structure, or what do we call it? Because one of the things that one of the concerns I personally had was how do we reknit the community that we felt AMG broke apart, and I guess I won't blame AMG 100% because I do think that while some of the rules had issues, right? I feel overall competitively the game had a million times better competitive feel to it once we went away from just blowing people up. Right? Like, I don't know, I know everybody feels that way, but like when we talk about the community, are you talking about just working with the new rule set? Are you talking about being inclusive and saying, okay, and I guess I'll just throw out an example. In my world, what it would be is you would have 2.5 and 2.0 share the exact same amount of points. You could do whatever you want with the rule sets, either combine them, keep them separate, and then it's just another alternative game mode so that way everybody can work together to be essentially unified in terms of how the points work, but at the same time play the style of game that they would like to play, because we all know that there's different styles. Not everybody likes objectives, and there's that one objective that we all really hate. So yeah, salvage, you're a big salvage mission fan over here.
So a couple of things. First of all, our priority right now in the short term, when it comes to eventual testing for the public in the coming months, an emphasis on coming months, not after Adepticon. I just want you all to be aware that will come this year, is the current rule set. Now, that isn't necessarily a vote of totality and confidence and what exactly we have now, but there are a lot of things that we do think we can address and adapt, and in the short term just makes more sense to use the current rule set. In terms of 2.0, 2.5, or what folks are calling X-Wing Legacy, we're talking with them and actually having really productive conversations with them. However, the vision of creating a unified X-Wing, I think, is as ideal as it is problematic, depending on how you want to look at it. One, we're not in the business, and when I say business, I say that very loosely. This isn't a business at all, of wanting to make everybody or forcing everyone to play one version of the game that we think is the version of the game everyone should play. We do want to provide a resource for people to be able to play a clean, healthy, growing, vibrant version of the game and turn people to the direction if they do want to try X-Wing Legacy. They are fundamentally different in a lot of ways. Scenarios is one key thing, point structure is another. Um, we're discussing exactly what we want future point structure to look like past Adepticon 2025. And honestly, it's going to be a conversation that needs a lot of research and testing because it's a big change. If we any change at all is a big change. So ultimately, Tanner, it's a good question. We really just want as many people playing this game at the end of the day, and we want to be able to offer a solution that is approachable and that is sustainable at the same time.
And I think it can be, and again, I think, like I said, the rule sets right. That's going to be a little bit harder of a task because I think there's some people that it's not even objective. Sometimes people just don't like certain obstacle rules, which whatever. I just in the long run of things, to me, all of that is pretty standard. The big thing with the AMG side, right, is they cut everything down to 20 points so that you can fit objectives. And I still feel that you can include legacy players and have one style point system and two separate point scoring systems, right? So everything could be 200. You could go away from the loadout points, or you could keep the loadout points. I mean, that's, if you think about it, in true reality, if you really think about it, they boiled 200 points down to 20 points by dividing by 10, and then said it either fits in the 50 point tier or the 60 point tier. Like, there is no in between. Right. Whereas with the legacy points, while I don't always agree 100% with the legacy side of things, I do like the point structure for list building, in the fact that it gives a little bit more flexibility. Again, I'll pick on Han. Right. We had Han where they had to cut loadout and had to cut certain things down, and then Han's still pretty bloody oppressive. And then I can just switch to Lando, and now I'm coordinating instead of re-rolling. So I think there's value in that, and that's kind of, for me personally, and I think a lot of people in the community, it's a big rub. Like, I don't want to see a bunch of people arguing and infighting like we had before. I would like to see as much of a cohesive relationship and community as we can get.
Sure. We do too. Yeah. I just think that we can't force anything either. If we get to the point where our conversations, there are some firm things that we can't align on, we would rather coexist peacefully and then have to try to be like my way or the highway kind of attitude. Because we saw the original version, not picking on anybody, but when we first had this transition to 2.5 a couple of years ago, there was an X-Wing Legacy project that kind of came out of nowhere and did everything too fast. And I think if they were to do it again, rather, they would probably change some things and roll things out a little slower. And the state of X-Wing Legacy now is phenomenal. The people running it, they're great. I love talking to them. And I definitely can't say nicer things about those folks. I know that there are some fundamental things that people will disagree with between the current rule set we play with in OP and Legacy. But I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we're willing to entertain and try to get to that point where we can have something cohesive. We just can't promise it, because if people want to play 2.0 as it is, and we want to work on certain things that are different, we're not going to make anybody think they have to play one version of the game.
So I do have a follow-up question on that, because obviously we still have GT events that are going on there until past Adepticon. We know that there's some events happening over in like Australia, and also the Richmond Open that's going to be in May of next year, past Worlds. Does the XWA have any plans on putting on official events at the same time, concurrently with AMG, that may explore the different formats, or are they more waiting till AMG is done with their events in order to then starting out experimenting with the various formats?
Yeah, no, and I know, Tanner, you have your thoughts on this for sure, as I saw in your show notes. So these are things that, like, it's not to deflect, but it's putting multiple carts before a fleet of horses. In terms of saying we'll concurrently run events past Adepticon 2025 with AMG, and it's really just because we want to make sure that we have something that we're confident in, that folks at a larger scale and 2 scale can play. So we want to just make sure when we fire that starting gun that we're 100% ready. So I think there's going to be a lot to look forward to right after Worlds. In terms of specific dates or events or anything, we haven't even begun to look at that squad for OP. So it's just too early to say exactly what that's going to look like. But we do feel we have more free reign past Worlds 2025, and I'll tell you guys why. The main thing is the current X-Wing 2.5 and its organized play is already partially community driven with squad builders. So the folks that do want to be at these events use those squad builders to put together their lists and save them. And we want to be respectful of the fact that that is just the way it is and let that run out. And then we can concurrently at the same time, next few months, internally test and then provide the public in a few months on the side stuff that they can play test and try leading up to Worlds. We just don't want to step on the feet of AMG, and it's not because we love AMG. It's not a stance. It's really just we need to kind of make sure that we take the time to do this right and also not confuse people, because there are people that are going to go to these events and want to play. And if we do this wrong, it'll be just chaos, and we will set ourselves back in progress a lot.
Yeah. So kind of to piggyback on that, and I actually, I as pointed as I was in my show notes, right? Like there is, there is, I do feel that there is some genuinity, right, for your team and wanting to do that, right? Like I like it's not for AMG, it's for the players, right? Like, which is, I don't know if that's a constructed answer, if that's a heartfelt answer, but I'm going to go with that's a heartfelt answer. Thank you, Nick. Like that's like that to me. That as a player, that's that. I will be frank and say I probably won't attend a GT because I'm sick of AMG's points, and the interest in that portion of it is just, it's not there, right? Like I don't have a feel of desire to do that. But now that doesn't mean that we had, so for example, Michigan GT, we didn't get elected for a GT, even though we probably should have been, and we requested it. And I feel that AMG, what they did is they gave everybody that 1 week notice in hopes that nobody would apply for it. And then everybody applied, and they're like, crap, what do we do now? Because we don't have enough product to do that. And to get a little bit more pointed, what is your team going to do though to help encourage people to stay within the game? So if somebody like me, who is going to openly state that I have zero interest in OP support from AMG at this point, like I could care less, like none of it's that cool. It's stuff that we've already had. A lot of it was stuff that it feels like it's a leftover from Worlds, like a very late design. Like, what the cool thing would have been is if they would have given us a whole nother pack of dials and like tokens, even though they're cardboard, those were cool Rebel stuff. That was like, when we got that last year, that was awesome. That was like top of the line. I love that. Whether AMG was planning on doing that before COVID, I have no idea, but that was a great movement. So what is the plan, or how do you want to work towards not losing communities that have lost interest in A, supporting AMG, and B, attending some of these regional type things?
Yeah, I mean, so a part of this is gonna be an XWA answer, and a part of this is gonna be myself, which I think can coincide. I'm gonna start with my own part of this response, for myself, is that you're not beholden to Atomic Mass Games. And I feel like we've had this because of the way OP has existed for X-Wing and always has been supported by organized play. We just have naturally been beholden to Fantasy Flight Games and Atomic Mass Games because it's just how it works. I totally get it. We're at this point now where it definitely feels like a stage of limbo, but you see what we're doing what we're doing with the X-Wing Alliance, and then you see a couple of different communities even putting together some points you can try for fun that people can play at their game stores. If you are, and this is some tough love, if you are thinking about leaving based on what's going to come soon, which is like beta points for play testing for the public, a new era of OP beyond 2025, I think you are looking for a reason to leave. And I respect that. If you want to walk away from the game now, I think now is the time, if you just don't feel like playing X-Wing anymore. But there's this attitude that it's like, why bother? The GTs are all the old points, when there are a lot of things that you can do and experiment with from the community side that will keep you having a good time. I can vouch for my own Discord. We, in the interim, before we've gotten XWA points, released some points for people to play with and test and have fun with. And people are playing it at their game stores. It's like blowing me away that people are like, they're telling me like, our game store is using these points. Like, that's awesome. And they're having fun. So I think there are a lot of different ways that you can still enjoy this game and keep going. You don't need to quit unless you want to.
Yeah. And I think the big thing, Nick, and I get that point, but I think the big thing isn't that some of us are looking for the excuse to leave. I think some of us are looking for, if we want this game continue into longevity, I cannot have 4 sets of points. So, and I'm going to give an example of Destiny.
Right.
Destiny is a very good example. That ended during COVID. There was a group that came together and said, hey, here, we got points. We want to release it. And then a second group came out of the woodwork that had a very high player turnout in their country and said, well, look, we're going to do something too. The two couldn't work it out. And they said, here, we're just going to let them coexist. And now look at Destiny. Destiny has essentially, like, it went from having 4, 5, 6, 700, I think, people right at the end of its life down to maybe 100, 150 that play it on regular. And I think that's the big thing. So like somebody like me that says, hey, if you're saying these points are hint, possibly hint, things that could come out next year, play and test them, have fun with them, great. But if like 7 people come out with different point sets, it's like, it's going to be hard to continue. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, the fact that like I want to give Maui just put together a wish list of points that he would love, and people played them because they just wanted to. And then what we did, it's really just kind of a bridge to the next steps, a bigger effort. This is not in any way going to be a look into the future of like what points is going to look like, where all these communities are going to have their own rule sets. We're kind of gonna not sunset 312 points, but just not promote them once we get the XWA's beta points. What we're actually planning on doing in with the points we have right now that we've created is to take the playtest data and what players have been saying and give that to the points team at XWA so that they have some proactive data from things we've tried that they can use to inform decisions if they'd like to when they're doing their work. So it's all productive, but I understand you don't want to live in a world where there's just no cohesion and there isn't just one place you can look and be like, this is it. I can't promise that there's going to be one version of X-Wing that every single person that's ever played X-Wing or still plays X-Wing is going to vouch for and be like, I can get behind this. But we're going to try to get to a point where we get as many people to stay on and join as possible. It's kind of a politician's response, but it's really is true. It's true. So
now I do got to follow up on it because this has been kind of like one of the biggest topics that's come out since ANG's release is, do we return to legacy points? Do we go back to legacy rules, for 2.0 or keeping 2.5 and making adjustments there? Is there any talks that you guys can talk about trying to include some of that part of the community that was from 2.0 that had played that in order to bring them over to a more unified front? Or is XWA just trying to essentially work with what you got currently right there and then just hope for the best afterwards in terms of rules and points?
Yeah, so I can, without saying too much, because again, it's not really my place to leak things that are early, but we've talked about, there have been conversations around a few things in terms of just like point structure, the conversation around 200 points. I would hope you would all hope that we have talked about. It is a huge topic of discussion with integrating or finding a way to make list building 200 points again. The topic has been brought up on if we do continue to use loadout in conjunction with that change or not, or if we use 20 points. Some people have thrown out doubling it to 40, right? None of these are an indicator when I say these is what we are going to do, but we are very vigorous. We're vigorously having these conversations about what we should do moving forward. So if you are a 2.0 person who still plays 2.0 purely because they love the 200 point list building structure, which I'm going to take a step back, take my hat off, the XWA hat off, and be like, I miss 200 point list building. I think it was the best version of list building personally, but there are things with the current rule set that even I like, scenarios that I really like, and I think make the strategic side of the game really engaging, even though it can be sometimes a lot. So we're trying to look at what's best for balancing, because we have gotten to the point in 2.5 where there is the SL power creep specific culprits that we, are obvious, are just too good. And there are a lot of pilots that I think people would love to see either in their list or against them on the table that I think belong back in the game or just being considered. And so to do that, it's not so easy. You can't just pull one lever because the other one's going to go up. So it's going to be a long road ahead, but we care about the 200 point conversation. And I think it's exciting to be able to entertain a world where we get that. because I think
Yeah.
it's possible.
Well, and I think that's what we miss with AMG. With AMG, what did we get? A lot of well, this is all you're gonna get, right? This is and non-answers and all of this garbage that we just are like, could we just have like honest conversations? Like, are you guys open to having an honest conversation, AMG? No, we're not. Okay, well, at least we would know. And I think that kind of leads into, another question that I had, and it's a little bit of a throwback when it talks about, how do you elections and who do you have members and things like that are making up your team. But one of the big things that came to mind is, do you have game developers that you're working with? So for example, is there people on your team that are either, even if they're not nationally known, I don't think anybody, we're going to attract a nationally known game developer to run an IP that we legally, technically are going to could possibly run into circumstantial issues with, right, in the long term if the mouse decides to get pissy. I don't foresee that personally, but that could be a thing. So are you working with like game developers of any sorts that are kind of helping out with either some of the transition or maybe giving you on a high level some guidance towards development aspects?
We have people with development experience, is what I'm going to say.
There you go.
No, there's no corporation or companies involved in being like, hey, I'll throw out my name in the ring. We're also aware of just like legal stuff. The X-Wing Alliance should be seen as a group, a fan group, right now. That we're not selling anything, we're not asking for money, no one is getting paid. It's all volunteer based. I know that was something that was asked in the chat earlier, if anyone was getting paid. And JJ, I appreciate you responding in your Twitch chat there, but. I think it's something that we have people with legal experience, professional experience, as well as development experience that are involved in this. And that's great. We're definitely not trying to give somebody who has no idea what they're doing a position or role where they can't be successful. I'm going to say that for sure. I think the reason why I am here is because I'm really good at running my mouth, and like I could talk a lot, and I feel like I can represent, JJ can vouch, and I feel like I can represent the collective well, and also feel like I'm giving you guys responses that aren't just total deflections. Like, I want you all to be satisfied. I can't give you everything. It's early, but I want you to be satisfiid with at least the direction that you feel we're going after this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that the important piece of that, right, is the fact that you are working with somebody that working with people that have experience and understanding. Because the last thing we want, right, like, because I think there's always like the business pants side, and then there's the fun side, and then there's somebody that can put the two together, right? And like in my world, I work for a corporate. I work in healthcare, and so like. We have certain things we would like to do, but you can't because it's not profitable, but it should be better for the patient, yada, yada. It's this big argument. And so you have to like have two different sides. What's the business side versus the pants side? And I think that's important to the longevity of whatever is happening. If we're going to continue to keep the game alive and grow the game, that is super huge, because if somebody does not understand and you guys put out points that are basically somebody's fantasy, like if you give me 1 point droids, no pressure. And you increase the ship limit to 10, no pressure. And let me play, 10 droids, then
you want to play a 2-round game, Tanner? I'm going to pass on playing a two-round game with you. But.
That's Armada. I'm sorry, you're right. That's Armada. We just go back to Armada. We just play 2 rounds.
Oh, no Armadas. No Armadas slander. Deserve that. Man. Oh,
anyway.
No. So I just something I'm reading in the chat here that I want to echo. There are a couple things to keep in mind when just being like, hey, what about the mouse? Like, I am not a lawyer, and I'm going to say now, I'm not a legal expert when I say this, but there are 2 things that are true that I want you all to keep in mind. One is that this isn't a business and we're not selling any product. It's technically a 2-parter. And
the second part will cost you.
The other thing is we're not claiming ownership over X-Wing in any way. We're just claiming responsibility for keeping the game going when it's no longer going to be supported. But we're not being like, we are the owners of X-Wing, we're taking it over, we're gonna really, disrupt everything. And that's another reason why it's smart to just wait, because we need to, obviously, for developmental purposes, but until AMG kind of walks away, because we're not trying to cause some sort of stir that gets someone pissed at Asmodee corporate, because ultimately you can send a cease and desist for anything, right? So even though we're not selling anything, we just want to be mindful of how we integrate and grow into being responsible for keeping the game going, or at least partially responsible, right? Next to Legacy, for example.
Okay, so I do have to ask a question regarding that, right? Because obviously you guys want to be choosy. I guess that's the shortest way to say that, and I don't mean that in any negative connotations at all on who exactly is participating in making these decisions there. So does that mean that not everyone can join the XWA in terms of like helping out? Like if you got a really enthusiastic person, doesn't have a much of a background in like design or anything like that, but
JJ.
can anyone join the XWA?
Yeah, so I think it just depends. So there is going to be a public side of the XWA. Yes, the answer is yes. Anybody, I will give you guys links that you can drop. I can even let me see if I can. I'll try to pull them up before the show ends. I don't have them in front of me right now, but to sign up to help the XWA, and in what capacity it will vary, but playtesting is a big one. We're going to want as many people to help us as possible, and that is one way of a few that you can be a part of the XWA. The other thing is the XWA will have a strong presence in the X-Wing 2.5 edition Discord. It's another thing I can link for you guys. We are kind of building out a plan on exactly what parts are going to be, what structurally it's going to look like in that Discord. However, the server itself with the community representatives and the folks who are on these committees is going to be separate of that, just because one's going to be more of a workspace and the other is going to be more of a place where everybody can get together and feel like we're all working together, because that is what we're going for here. Is a community. It is, you need a community to make a community. So yes, anybody can help us.
There you go. See, and that's the thing. There you go. That's the biggest question, right? Is can people get involved? Because if you have an autonomy where you're basically nobody, like I go back to the Monty Python skit, right? Like at the very beginning of Monty Python, you have King Arthur galloping around with his coconuts, and they'll talk about like an Ocratic system, and it's basically like everybody's making fun of that. But like I feel that way that is to some extent happened, and I understand like this is where some people were like, well, it's just these heads of X-Wing, these people that have been spokespeople before.
That's right.
Like, and it's like, yeah, well, hold on a second. So first off, in my opinion, is thank you to somebody for actually stepping up and doing it, right? Because like you all didn't have to do it. So like, as pointed as I am at A&G, I can also be grateful that there's people that did want to stand up, and then there is an ability to elect and have council. So as you move forward, are you going to be able to open up that council at some point, to other people to say, hey, we're going to have, let's say 16, we'll call them six, it's a corporate board, even though I don't want to use that terminology because we can't use that terminology yet, sure. Because I think that puts you in lawsuit standings. But are you going
just the vibe is that's not the vibe, is corporation.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is if you add 45 cooks to your kitchen, you might not be getting much out of the kitchen, right? So we want to make sure that we have the people that that best represent the interests of the community at large, kind of leading the charge and structuring things and keeping things moving, while also not having 20 of them. We have 3 that are kind of right now have been chosen to kick things off. However, there have been discussions about term limits. There will be different people voted in. People could be voted out. Those are all things that are big picture things that it's just not on the forefront of my mind, but will be a factor and will exist. And the Discord, as I kind of alluded to earlier, that server, the workspace server, we will certainly consider adding more folks to who we feel belong. And there isn't one person that's going to decide, no, that person shouldn't be in here, or yes, that person should be in here. It's not exclusive company, but it has to be partially exclusive if you want to get things done. So I do ask for some trust in the really big names from literally all over the world that are involved in this. It's not just a bunch of crates. It's not just Greg and I. It's not just, XTC New Zealand or, whatever, some random thing. It's everybody with so much experience. The squad builders, Andre Lin from Launch Bay Next is in there. Flipster from Tabletop Simulator is in there, right? Just to name a couple. We just ask that you guys give some trust to the people who spend way too much time for free and were involved with this game, and we'll absolutely consider adding more people to be a part of it as we go forward.
Yeah, and I think that
it sounds like. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that benefits the community as a whole. And so, Nick, thank you for the answer. I mean, that's one of the things where it's like, hey, that was definitely not a question we even teed up for you. So that was one of the ones, though, that is, to me, one of the more important pieces is how can we get others involved and make sure that people as a community feel whole. But yeah, not everybody wants to put the effort into it, right? You know, like it's a factor. You know, like it's a thing. Not everybody has spent time community building and has that desire. So, all right, JJ, what were you gonna say?
Now, I was going to say, like, just like you're describing, Nick, you have a lot of people that are involved from various communities worldwide. You guys have like an unbeatable team, much like Psychedelic Pina Jam on 312
Oh
League.
my gosh.
However, with that being said, there is concern about how long the people that have been elected will be there. Like, how often is the XWA planning to have people be in these positions of leadership? How often will elections take place?
Yeah, so I will tell you all this. Again, we're going to try to be as transparent as possible, and the reason why maybe I can't give you everything is because everyone has to agree on something before I can say this is the way things are going to go. It's not so much me hiding anything, but there has been a proposal that came out like today that includes a mention of time for term limits, and that is as far as it's gotten so far. It's a working document, so I think it won't be very long, but it's not going to be 3 months. It's going to be it's going to be longer than that. It's kind of like, think of it as a cycle. If something comes up where someone is just can't, something, life gets in the way and they need to step down, that's certainly something that can happen or could happen. But yes, I will say, I think 6 to 12 months is like the range for now. I don't think it'll be longer than a year, but I do not know the exact number as of right now. It's being worked on.
That's fair.
And I don't think I don't think we should push that point. Like, I think that I think the understanding
Doesn't matter
that
that much right now. I don't think.
Yeah, it's open, right? You're opening it to the public, and that you are going to have some sort of an executive way to maintain, so we don't have Greg being the only person on there and basically saying the only way you could play games is if you play on his channel, right? So, like, at least we have that.
I do want to give him a little bit of some love here. Sorry, Greg, this is going to make you uncomfortable, but he is the one that sprung into action to get this server put together and get everyone together in the same room. So I do want to give Greg from Nickel City X-Wing the proper shout out. I think some folks hopefully already know that he did that. But I just really do appreciate the initiative that he has taken to be involved and get the right people in the room together. And when I say the right people, I just mean people that you would look at and be like, yeah, that makes sense that they're involved. That's what I mean by right people.
Yeah. So in terms of development, and I kind of want to shift gears a little bit because I think we've grilled you enough, and I think we understand the place of passion, and that there's an understanding here, and that the desire is to work as best as you can with the whole community, and that you're not going to elect a emperor of all times, right? We're not going to get a Palpatine here. So, except for, it would be cool if I had a Palpatine pilot. But so let's talk. Can we talk for a few minutes a little bit about future development? Anything you can't share, that's fine. Like, I don't care. Because I know there'll be questions about, are you going to continue with standard loadout cards? Is that an easier way? And I never had a discussion on the podcast, but I had a discussion with a gentleman I respect quite a bit, and we talked a lot at length because I am not a big fan of standard loadout cards. They save longevity of the game, makes things a lot easier. It's easier to do these things. It's easier to produce. Sure. And so can you talk a little bit about maybe a few of the development points or things that you guys are excited to say, hey, this is what we're working on? Like, are you going to introduce new models? Are you going to give us new pilots? We know points are coming, right? So, like, you don't have to tell us about the points, unless you're going to tell me Grievous is going to get his outmaneuver back. Then I'm sold. I'll be playing X-Wing tomorrow morning, baby. I'll be getting my...
I might have to invite you into the server if that's going to be, no, for sure. Yeah, you're a lot of big separatist fanboys in the server that are good representatives for you. So you're in good hands. I'm not promising Grievous gets his outmaneuver back, by the way. So
I heard it here, folks. I heard it here, folks.
Oh no, I'm fired. I just got a message. My free job, I'm fired. So developments. SL cards, on the topic of standardized loadout cards, they are absolutely something that we would continue to consider being created and part of the game in a point structure that makes them more balanced, is really the caveat there, because that's our problem right now. Is you have a 20-point system where you bring them up a point, they're not played anymore. You bring them down, it's ridiculous. You're stapling it into every list, right? That's just the reality of the situation. Why would I ever build an Imperial list without Tome Axe in it, right? Why would you ever build a Republic list without at least 2 arcs, probably 3 with Oddball? 2 examples. So, but again, they need to be balanced. And so the only way that there is a restriction to being able to do much balancing with them as is currently right now. But there are some benefits to standardized loadout cards. You cited a couple of them. I think it's a way you can lock in a design space. And really the execution on points is just where things have fallen flat. So I think there'll be more emphasis on custom list building again. Let's make list building more fun. And, you can spend time in the bathroom for 20 minutes on your list builder and just building lists again. That's gone. And so those are definitely things we want to emphasize. I think there is a world where they can still exist because there are things to like about them. They're just too good right now. And we'll make sure that they're balanced. This is really what I can promise. 3D models and printing. That's where you start to get legal stuff that you have to figure out. You're providing it could be seen as product. And the X-Wing model is if you look up the IP info or the trademark info rather on the X-Wing model, it is all over the place. I mean, the anything that looks like it has been trademarked. So I don't really have much to say about that. I think it would be great. I think it's possible. I will say that it's possible. It's certainly something that we want to do. And I can say that we want to do it. Is it possible from a logistics perspective? TBD. Did I answer your question, or is there something else I missed?
Yeah. The only other piece of it is so I guess is pilots creating new pilot cards or new standard loadout cards. Is that also the same type of thing? Is like that also a gray area because of that type of a thing, or is that something where you can get away with it because we could put Wedge with an A in it? And it's no longer the guy from the X-Wing movie. It's now a dumbass that has an A in his name, and hopefully doesn't reduce your dice anymore.
Wadge.
Yeah. Wadge. There you go. Wadge. I like that.
Wadge Antilles. Yeah. I don't know how to answer that, Jared. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
I just don't. Sure, you could do it at home. Homebrew it, man.
Yeah, I just asked because, one of the pieces of the X-Wing, right, is, like, especially for the longevity of the game, is we all own a million models of things, right? And that was one thing we as a podcast had encouraged AMG to do. Not that I don't know. I swear to God, they listened to our show because they said my ending tagline is see you on the flips or see you on the flippity flop, and they use that. He used that. I swear to God, nobody ever used that, but maybe they did. I don't know. Anyway, but one of the things we encouraged was why would you not create us more pilot card packs? Like, we can argue about standard loadout or not standard loadout. I don't care about that. Like, can you give us other content that can be introduced into the game? And again, I know there's a points balancing thing, so it's not like I'm saying, hey, let's have this by September or December.
Sure.
But is that something like a development standpoint that also could happen? Because if you can't give us models or can't give blueprints for models, but you could give pilots or different ways, there's a million other people in Star Wars, for Christ's sake. I mean, this is a expansive universe, and you're no longer beholden to the mouse to say, well, you can no longer use, all of this legacy extended stuff that they want to ignore. Like, can I get an evil Skywalker?
Tanner, there is a design lead. Paul Heaver is the design lead, so it's, the design means creating things and experimenting with things and ultimately providing resources that people can play that will be different and new. So, yes, in terms of card packs, printable cards or bases, stuff like that is something that AMG, in their case, lazily did, but I think is an opportunity for us that we could use. So, I am gonna promise that there will be new stuff to look forward to. When I can't say.
And that's fine. We don't need to know what it is now. Like, don't
September
tell anybody.
8th.
Yeah, there.
3:03 a.m. Yeah.
Well, I prefer not 3:03 a.m.
Take out of the cut. Well, it's an obscure time zone release.
Okay. But and I think it goes back to the thing of, what is the thing that we love about X-Wing, right? We love the can you bring the people from my books to life? Can you give me a High Republic? Can I get a specific Thrawn character that somehow can come into this game that's not an Armada, expansion, right? Like, and I think that's important to the growth or the continuation of the game. And again, I'll reference SSD just because I went through this. They have ways of skirting the mouse. We'll just put it that way. And if you ever need somebody to get in touch, I know people that do that. I could put you guys in touch with them. You guys could talk through it. Like, I don't need to know any specifics though. I want to stay out of that realm so that way it keeps our podcast on the up and up with.
Sure.
As one day. So, well, I think we want to kind of tone it down and kind of wrap it up. I think we've asked you a lot of questions. I think one of the big things we never asked you about Epic Play. Are you guys even planning to do anything with Epic?
Yes.
Good. Can you give us a preview of what
Yes.
Epic is going to be so that I can put my I have 3 of those stupid squids that nobody will play with me. I own 3 of them because I won 2.
Yeah.
When can I use those?
Oh man, Tanner, that's a good question. Well, all I know is Paul Heaver is on a cruise right now, so he's focusing on Epic as one of his priorities. So when Paul is back, I plan on interviewing him and the other leads, and we can definitely talk about Epic. So here's my little deflection response to you. But 100% Epic is going to be something that we want people to get back into and play again and feel like it has a purpose and that it is being supported.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I think we grilled you enough. To me, what this feels like is that there's the spark of hope, the light at the end of the tunnel. We feel that there's not, this big ask of this. And I know on our podcast we said, hey, we really are kind of done once it's done. But if there's a continued effort, and I'll make this statement on behalf of the podcast, if there's a continued effort to support X-Wing and to continue X-Wing in the growth, and there isn't a million infighting groups that we all have to deal with, and there's a stronger lead focus that works to be inclusive, that wants to hear everybody out, that wants to communicate, let's just say 50% more than what AMG ever did, then our podcast is here to support it. Do I need a weekly episode until you guys get things up and running? Probably not. But, is it something that we're willing to entertain, especially as a media outlet for the news, so you don't have to go on and like interview yourself? Sure. You're welcome on at any time, especially whenever you have like a big thing that's going to come up and you're like, hey, we really want to get some information out to as many channels as possible. All you got to do is just hit JJ or I up and say, hey, come join, or can I come join your podcast for an hour? But what I wanted to do is I want to give you kind of the final say, give us your overall thoughts, kind of what do you want to leave the community with here?
Sure. I'm actually just putting a couple of links in your chat as well. One is to sign up to help the XWA in the future form submission, and then the 2.5 edition Discord link.
Awesome.
So yeah, to wrap up, this is see the end of AMG era X-Wing as an opportunity for a lot of exciting things to come. We finally we no longer feel beholden to a studio that just simply didn't give us much attention or care, to be honest. And so you have the right people in the room that have your best interest at heart. I know that for some of you, it might be obfuscated, or it might be hard to assess if that's true or not. But I guarantee you, my job is to make sure that I also vouch for you all. I do care deeply about you all, and the reason why we're doing this is because you all are wonderful people. In this game, the game of X-Wing is not only a great game, but it's a game with a lot of players, and we want to keep and grow that game as much as possible. So we hope that you are patient with us and that you give us the benefit of the doubt. We encourage pushback and discourse, but with good intent, good faith. If you are, just trying to discourage people from playing a game that you personally don't like, I would reconsider being that person with that kind of attitude, because ultimately, it's up to people themselves what they want to play, and we're here to help those who are interested in continuing to play. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, awesome. And what we'll do is JJ will take any of the links that you put in the chat and any other links that you want, and links to your Discord and all that other fancy stuff. I mean, we will put them in the show notes so that everybody has access to those. And we genuinely encourage you to sign up. If you have an opinion, sign up and give them your opinion. Because I'm sure now's the time to talk about it. Let's not go complain about it 8 months down the road. And just so you know, they sent out a form. I think you guys sent out a form that you could fill out.
It's a contact form. I can get. Yeah, we'll make sure you put that in your notes your description as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And I went out and I already said, hey, I think you should work with Legacy people to figure out points. So this is nothing new to them. If they read through their things, they know that Tanner's already complained about that more than one time. So, but you know, either which way, thank you all for joining us tonight. With that being said, thank you, Nick, and we'll see you all on the Flippity Flop.
Have a good night, everybody.